want to give an aside to the Houston Texans because as much as I lament giving them any credit because you know how I feel about their organization, damn it, you got C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson. That's a successful night, no doubt about it. But I'm sorry, I'm caught up in the Eagles right now. I'm caught up in the emotion of the Eagles because of the misery that I see that they have brought to the Dallas Cowboys. Did you see Michael Parsons? Did you see him? Did you see him? He knows. He knows what we all know. Excuse me, my condolences to Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys offense and the rest of the teams in the NFC East. The Eagles, obviously, their ability to get at the quarterback, that defensive front line, that contributed largely to their success in getting them to the Super Bowl this past season. And now you go out and you get Carter, you get that brother to join Graham and Fletcher Cox in the crew. You get him. I mean, this is a beautiful day. This is a beautiful day. And to see Swagoo right there, I mean, you know how he is because him huffing and puffing, trying to blow somebody's house down, acting like he gonna scare people into feeling the way he wants them to feel. Even he found himself a bit despondent because he knows what's coming. The only bad part about Javon Carter ended up with the Philadelphia Eagles is this. It's a foregone conclusion. I'm sorry, it's a foregone conclusion. What's coming? It's a foregone conclusion. There's no suspense. We know that the Cowboys are going to get beat down this upcoming season because the Eagles have gotten stronger. And by the way, major props to Howie Roseman. This is a guy that was shoved aside stupidly by Chip Kelly, comes back, wins the Super Bowl, gets him to the Super Bowl last year, continues to build a Super Bowl contender, making all the right decisions. There is no question about that. And it reminded me of this, too, when we talk about Carter. 1995. You had an opportunity to get Warren Sapp. Show you how times have changed. You sat up there and you not only did you draft Mike Mamula, you moved up to get Mike Mamula in 1995. Not only did you move up to get Mike Mamula, you 95. Traded the picks with Tampa Bay. And what did Tampa Bay use with the picks they got from you? They drafted Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks. Those were the days in Philadelphia that we had to deal with when I was writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Clearly, times have changed. Congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles. Hell of a night last night.
I just don't understand how a team goes to the Super Bowl and then wins the draft. Howie Roseman cannot keep getting away with this. These other GMs, what are you doing letting this dude run away with these drafts? Because I totally agree with Stephen A. I think the Eagles want it. Not just because of the players they got, who are incredibly talented. The entire Georgia defense now in Philadelphia is very talented. But they also filled an area of sneaky need. The Eagles have, during Roseman's tenure of success, been built from the inside in the trenches. However, you lose Javon Hargrave, and then you've got players like Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham who are getting up in the year.
There was a gap of Philadelphia and San Francisco and everybody else, and the gap's bigger now. That's the crazy thing about what we saw happen with Philadelphia. San Francisco did not have a first-round pick. So they get two, and there's a lot of people in the college football world that thought that Georgia defense of 2 years ago was one of the greatest college football defenses ever. The Eagles got the 4 best players on that defense, somehow on their football team, which makes absolutely no sense when it comes to how you build a football team capability-wise. So totally agree that it's Philadelphia. The gap got widened. I thought there was one team in the NFC that kind of kept pace in that gap, and I agree, it's Seattle with Mina. I was a little bit disappointed with what draft Detroit had. I would say this, though, as well, and we can't overlook it, what Baltimore did. Lamar's not part of the draft. I'm aware of that, but getting Lamar Jackson on their football team was huge. And we were on TV, NFL Live, when the breaking news happened, and immediately we all thought, go get a wide receiver. Because of the new offense, Todd Monken's bringing their new offensive coordinator who comes over from Georgia. You've got Odell Beckham, you've got Rashad Bateman, you've got Mark Andrews.
Dan, I'm going to hold you on that.
Go get a wide receiver.
We're obviously going to get much more into Lamar, but I want to ask you about this, about the Texans. What did you think about them going all in at 2 and moving up to 3?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. C.J. Stroud's going to be a tremendous pro. To get C.J. Stroud, who's going to really fit kind of what they want to do schematically, the play-action pass world, he's a tremendous in-the-pocket passer, very smart player. We had Ryan Day on yesterday. He was talking about how good of a processor he is in dispute of some of the testing reports that came out. And then to go get Will Anderson, who a lot of people thought might be one of the best players in the draft last year, certainly one of the best players in the draft this year. And I think the thing that's sneaky about it, Miles, is this. I think Houston's a little bit better situated for the now and their future than people anticipate. They were bad last year because their quarterback play was so bad.
Yeah.
They got a good left tackle. They got 2 good guards. Their draft class last year was very good. They had a ton of picks in the next 2 drafts. So to get the one of the best quarterbacks in this draft, some people have him as the best, and one of the, if not the best defensive players in this draft, it was a tremendous draft for Houston.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. I mean, they don't deserve it. I mean, I'm not, Kazarian, don't get me started with him. I'm not inclined to give him any kind of love whatsoever. You know, I don't like what I've seen in Houston a little bit, but they do have D'Amico Ryans now. I believe in that, brother. And obviously, you're on the defensive side of the ball. You want to have somebody in that locker room. It's not just about their ability. It's the culture that you're trying to set up. And clearly, this had D'Amico Ryans' fingerprints all over it. I support what they did.
Mina,
Yeah.
you want to give us the final word
Yeah,
here?
we had been hearing for a couple of weeks that the Texans might pass on a quarterback, and Dan and I and pretty much everyone at NFL Live, we were befuddled by it. You're really going to wait another year. Yes, the quarterbacks next year are enticing, but you never know where you're drafting. And you go into this season with Davis Mills as your starter. It didn't make sense, as much as we knew that they loved Will Anderson, correctly so. So for them to come out of this draft with an incredibly accurate, pro-ready passer who I agree with Dan is a good fit for Bobby Slowick, their new offensive coordinator's offense, and Will Anderson, the building block of D'Amico Ryans' defense, that's a good start for this new franchise.
Scouts went back and watched its tape at Kentucky, and they didn't like it but so much. When you look about the scouting grade, if I remember correctly, guys, you guys would know this better than me, Dan, Mina, I think it was like a 91. I think it was the same as Anthony Richardson. That's what they were saying. So for Anthony Richardson to end up 4th overall, but for Will Levis to fall completely out of the first round with the bevy of teams that supposedly were looking for a quarterback and needed a quarterback, I think we need to take a step back and look at some of the things that they were saying about him. They saw his level of production at Kentucky. You know, he was prone to throw some interceptions, hold on the ball a little bit too long, making some wrong decisions. We get all of that. Other times you heard he was being interviewed. There was some cockiness. I don't buy that crap at all because that comes with it. You got to be confident as a quarterback, and I'm certainly not going to knock him for that. But I will say this. You're in the SEC. You're in the most popular, the most bona fide college football conference in America. We know how dominant they were in terms of their selections in this draft. We know people have seen you. We've heard noise about Kentucky. You have Mel Kiper Jr. and others talking about how high you could potentially go. You had the same scouting or the same, just draft a number as Anthony Richardson in terms of the scouting report. I think, like I said, it was at 91, and you fall completely out of the first round. Something is awry about that. Now, I don't think it's just the toe, unless they're saying they believe that the toe is going to require surgery, and that meant you could potentially miss next season, and that was a concern. That's legit. But if that's not the case, then we're talking about something else. Either they were lying for months about what they saw on tape, or they started looking into your personality, your character, and all the things that come with it, and they didn't like what they were seeing compared to those other quarterbacks, and that's why you fell out of the first round. Again, it's not the order that he was picked in. It's the fact that we saw 3 quarterbacks go in the first 4 picks, and somehow, some way, you dropped completely out of the first round, even though you put up some numbers and had some performances playing in the SEC. Something is wrong with that picture.
Something happened, not only with one team, but a bunch of them. Yes, and that's the part of the draft process. All right, so my answer to the quarterbacks that were drafted is twofold. And Stephen A., this is me being dead serious. If I get out of line here, check me, because as a white dude, it might come off corny saying this, but like, right. I did, and I said this to Marcus last night, I do think it's kind of cool that for the NFL, last week, the highest paid player in the history of the NFL was a black player or black quarterback in Jalen Hurts. And then yesterday, a black quarterback in Lamar Jackson. And then the first 2 picks of the NFL draft are black quarterbacks. The first 3 picks at quarterback are black quarterbacks. I don't think that's ever happened. I think that's a pretty big deal for the NFL and for that position to be celebrated. And I know it might come off corny that a white dude's saying it or whatever. I do think it's a pretty cool kind of moment for the NFL to celebrate and for black quarterbacks to celebrate. I think it's pretty cool.
It's a pretty big moment, and it's also a big moment for people like you to say it, because the reality of the situation is we need folks like you and Mina and others to say that, because it's something that we've always known, and it's something that we've always wanted to bring attention to, and that's why you have diversity on television, and we talk about the importance of diversity in other platforms, so these kind of things can be addressed in a manner that is deserved. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
You know, Dan,
I just thought it was a really kind of cool moment.
Go ahead, Mina.
Go ahead. One more
agree.
thing, MK.
It's
One
been
more
five.
thing, MK.
Yeah, sure. No, go ahead. Okay.
I think.
Look, it's been 5 years since Lamar Jackson was drafted, and of course we're going to talk about his big contract. I remember that draft so well. I remember him dropping in large part because the NFL at that point, mere 5 years ago, was not ready for a Lamar Jackson, didn't properly apprehend his skill set, misrepresented who he was in college. He played in a pro-style offense at Louisville, but was often talked about like he didn't. And you remember there were questions about whether or not he could play quarterback. So flash forward to now. To me, Anthony Richardson in particular, going 4th overall, is a testament to how much the NFL has evolved, how they look at the quarterback position differently, how they understand that athleticism is an attribute, and also doesn't mean that that quarterback doesn't have potential to develop as a pocket passer. The Indianapolis Colts saw Jalen Hurts' progression, what he did in the Super Bowl. They hired his coach, and they looked at Anthony Richardson, and they believed he could do it too. I'm not saying he's, exactly like Lamar Jackson. There's a ton of differences from how they were in college. But to me, the fact that he went 4th overall is a testament to where this league has evolved on the position. And Will Levis dropping, there's question marks, but frankly, based on the tape, he was always the 4th quarterback in this class. If you watch NFL Live, he was always talked about that way.
Okay. Well, Mina, this is where what you just said becomes very, very important as we look at the career of Levis moving forward. Because the draft grade of 91 that matched Anthony Richardson, again, him going 4th, this guy falling out of the 1st round. What Dan brought up and what I alluded to before Dan spoke about, something happened. Usually, as we sit here with what Dan brought up, how it's really, really cool, we see the African Americans being picked this way, we end up seeing them being evaluated this way, et cetera, et cetera. That's usually something that's happened to the brothers. Okay, and last night, it happened to Levis. And so now what we need to do is we need to find out why that happened. How the hell did this man fall out of the 1st round? Because there's quite a few teams that need a quarterback now. Quite a few teams that need a quarterback. And that's not to say he can't get picked up by somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, because he definitely will get drafted. But for him to fall out of the 1st round when you had like 26, 27 picks to go after 3 quarterbacks were already picked before you, that is alarming. And it says a lot about something happening because everybody can't be that off. This is a couple of weeks ago. His name, a week ago, his name was being mentioned, in terms of potentially being a top pick. And you don't go from that to falling out of the damn 1st round. Something happened.
Yeah, I think in regards to that, Stephen, the big takeaway is you can't just be talented anymore at that position. That you have to really be a multi-tooled and 3-leveled player. Like to go early in the NFL draft, you have to be able to beat people with your arm, you have to be able to beat people with your legs, and you have to be able to beat people with your mind at a very high level. And I do think that there might be some moments in the NFL where we saw Carson Wentz, who I was a massive fan of, physically as talented as can be, but maybe the personality or the leadership or whatever that you hear stories about wasn't what they wanted. Maybe a little bit of a Baker Mayfield situation type where the talent is all there and the abrasiveness that some people don't appreciate. Maybe there's some learning examples from that. The last thing I'd say about Anthony Richardson and kind of why, again, it's such a cool moment was I was watching Chris Ballard last night, who's the general manager of the Colts, was on Pat McAfee's show. And he kind of talked about taking Anthony, and he said Shane Steichen, their head coach, walked into his office and within 2 weeks of being on the job was like, there's stuff that this guy can do that just nobody else can. And to Mina's point, and why, again, this is such a cool moment, is we're now like kind of celebrating the uniqueness of some of these quarterbacks and how of the things that they can do rather than harping on the things that they can't do. And that's a big deal.
Thanks Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.